Hi, it's Mike with AskTractorMike.com. Well, as I post this, it is January 16th, and on January 15th, there was a big announcement from the FTC about the issue with right to repair with John Deere. And I'm speaking today with Willie Cade. And Willie, you are in an organization that tracks right to repair issues. Tell us a little bit about this issue and what's going on in the background that prompted the FTC to take action against Deere.
Sure, Mike. Let me first do a little bit of an introduction of who I am, just so your listeners know. My grandfather, Theo Brown, was chief engineer for John Deere in 1925, and a board member of John Deere when they decided to build tractors. And I kind of like the juxtaposition of where we are today at John Deere and 100 years ago when they first started to think about competing against Henry Ford and building tractors. The right to repair issue has really come up around the computerization of the equipment. My career was spent in refurbishing PCs in a relationship with Microsoft. My dad worked for International Harvesters, so I come from a divided family. And my grandfather had 158 patents when he retired. 38 of them were on the manure spreader. Some people think it went genetic, but we're not going to go there, okay? So it's really kind of a family business for me. I feel like I've come home to the family business when I'm working on this right to repair issue. I've been deeply involved in it for the past 7 years. And given my understanding of the technology of the computerization of this equipment, I've got a good sense of what is and what isn't true when spoken, especially in hearings and those kinds of things. The lawsuit filed in the Northern District of Illinois, Western Division yesterday by the Federal Trade Commission, the Attorney General of Illinois, and the Attorney General of Minnesota combined, really speaks to many of the issues that we've been bringing up time and time again, that many of your listeners probably already have personal experience on. I mean, I gotta tell you, it was really reassuring reading the complaint to go, oh yeah, I wasn't crazy. This really is a problem. This really is something that needs to be addressed. You know, there's about 1 million farmers in farm operations in the US these days, and about 97% of them are family owned. And most of those people are not going to go up and raise a stink with either their dealer or John Deere. They just can't afford to do it. They can't risk that. So I'm happy to be the guy that John Deere is displeased with. Yesterday's announcement and what I think is going to be coming tomorrow is also going to be very important. Go ahead with a question, because I could talk forever on this, Mike, but I just want to make sure you get your questions in.
Well, basically, right to repair goes back to the fact that the question is, are manufacturers, and this is not just in the ag world, but John Deere is in the center of it in the ag world, are they building products that can't be worked on by anybody but an authorized repair place? And that's a real problem with farmers, because everybody's farming at the same time, and your tractor goes down and everybody else's tractor's down. Physically, a dealer may not be able to get to all of them to get them fixed, and it creates a real mess when you're trying to get trying to get crops put in the ground or trying to get them out of the field. And so what the basic Deere has given a little bit, I know, in providing some access to the ability to repair their equipment, but I think this lawsuit says you're still holding back, and you're still pretty much forcing people, customers, to go to a dealership to get it repaired. Is that close to being where you're at?
Mike, you're being way too polite.
Okay.
Way too polite. Listen, they are using their monopolistic power to get more revenue than they actually deserve. They want what I would call a free market, which means they are free to do whatever they want. I'm much more interested in a competitive market where there are people competing with one another for the business. But given the way that they've designed their tools to repair the equipment, particularly the electronic tools, they only distribute it to authorized dealers. So you got to go back to authorized dealers. And one of the things that I was thinking about, in kind of anticipation of this call, I thought what I would do is just kind of run through some of the highlights of what was listed. And I think what will happen is that your listeners will understand and hear in their own experience how well the Federal Trade Commission, yes, the government, but how well the Federal Trade Commission really understood this issue, the time that they took investigating it, and I worked with them on part of that. But I think it's important for people to understand that this isn't just something that was thrown out. They worked very hard on it, and I think they got it right. That's what's really exciting to me. And the opening sentence talks about, for decades, John Deere has throttled the ability of farmers and independent repair providers to repair Deere equipment, leaving farmers wholly reliant upon Deere's network of authorized dealers. Boy, that's a really clear, powerful statement in my mind. And really what they do in the rest of the 37 pages is they go step by step, methodically through how they do it, why they do it. They also have quotes from John Deere executives talking about, yes, we knew we were doing that and we were doing that on purpose, that this wasn't just an accident. And quite frankly, I found that remarkable. In part of the preamble, they really talked about the seasonality of the business and how important it is to be able to repair in the moment. I mean, one of the things I quite frankly have real compassion for dealers, because I think they're in the middle in this. I think they're really being pushed by Deere corporate. And if I was a dealer and there's this seasonality that's associated with farming, of course I couldn't keep enough technicians hired all the time. It just wouldn't be profitable for me. So I'm a little bit betwixt and between that when season happens, whether it's planting or harvesting or whatever, is I can't have enough people on staff. I've got to rely on the independent guys, the people out there, the individuals themselves fixing their own equipment. But yet I can't give them the tools that they need. And they clearly state in the lawsuit that John Deere has a monopoly on repair, period. And they also note that, by the way, much of the same technology that's used on highway vehicles is used in agriculture. But the people in highway allow people to repair their own stuff. They don't restrict it. So there's no reason that they could do it. Here's a quote that I want to read too. Deere's restriction harms farmers and independent repair providers while enriching Deere and its dealers. As one Deere executive explained, and then there's a colon, and then there's a redacted sentence. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I would love to know what's behind that redaction. And by the way, they talk about Deere's parts business accounts for, redacted, percentage of its total operating profits. Now, when you look at the redaction, like I am, it's not just a single digit. It's more than one digit in that percentage. Is it 40, 50? I don't know, but someday we may find out. And then they talk about, in the 15th paragraph of this complaint, they talk about John Deere has responded to right to repair legislation and people like me who are out there promoting it, et cetera. A series of half measures and unfulfilled commitments. I mean, the MOU that was signed in January 8, 2023, That's a half measure that was unfulfilled. They did one in 2018. They did one in 2020. I mean, even as early as recent as Tuesday, John Deere had a story in the Wall Street Journal about they were really going to do it this time. They really were going to provide the. And I went, yeah, right. The other thing that they talk about in one of their paragraphs is that John Deere, in these arguments against right to repair legislation, have raised unfounded environmental, safety, intellectual property concerns, and just as a strategy to defeat the legislation. Not because it was real or right, but it's because they wanted to maintain their monopolistic position. Drives me crazy that they do this. I'm going to keep going unless you stop me, okay, Mike?
Well, I think the next thing I want to know, and you're going to get
Yep.
there, but what's next?
So coming up tomorrow, the FTC is going to be, as I understand it, is going to be issuing suggested legislative language to address this, both on the federal basis, on the state basis. I'm anxious to get to this, and right now I'm working with legislators in 15 different states, ag states, right? On getting legislation passed in the state legislatures. I'm hoping to be able to get this language out to all of my friends in the different states who want to introduce ag right to repair legislation. And I hope that your viewers will join me and work with me when we have hearings or talk to their state legislators. It is important. Right to repair legislation passed in Colorado almost 2 years ago now. And the way we got that done was by farmers talking to their legislator, but also going and testifying. I had a great time testifying when it finally passed in the Senate in Colorado.
Everything right now is leaning toward right to repair really moving forward. There were commissioners that voted against this action yesterday, and one of those is the guy that's going to be leading the FTC as of soon.
Yeah.
Is this going to turn into a political mess? What's your thoughts on that?
Commissioner Ferguson wrote the dissent. And when I read the dissent, he didn't disagree with any of the content of the litigation. He just wanted it to be on his watch when he was the chairman. And he also just wants to negotiate with John Deere a good deal. I'm a little concerned about negotiating a good deal with John Deere because they have consistently have not kept their commitments in this particular process. So, but I think this administration that's coming in, they really understand farmers. They understand farmers are integral to their base. So I believe we're going to have some real progress from this administration. I mean, I'm here in Washington right now. I want to meet with Senator Hawley's staff, and I'm also meeting with Senator Warren's staff. Can you imagine two senators that you would never think would be on the same page on anything, but they are on right to repair?
Willie, last question I want to ask you, just to kind of wrap up. The issue is not with most small tractors, right? I mean, there's a certain tractor largely used in agriculture that has all of the electronic components that are pretty much you got to have diagnostic tools to work on it, and those are proprietary for John Deere. On a lot of the smaller tractors, that's not the case. I don't want to mislead a lot of people that have compact tractors, and a lot of folks that watch my channel do, that think I can't work on this, or my shade tree mechanic can't work on this. Is there a break when in size of tractor where this really impacts people? How do you address that?
I'll be a little bit careful here, Mike. I concur with you not every repair on a tractor is limited by its electronic control, but more and more devices and more pieces of equipment, even the smaller and smaller tractors, are starting to have electronics that control them. And that we get a lot of great functionality out of that, and I love that functionality. But when that functionality breaks, you got to go into the electronics. The way to think about this is inside tractors there are computers. They're called ECUs, electronic control units, and to those are sensors are connected. So all of those sensors are giving data to the ECU. The ECU makes some decisions based on that, whether it's pushing forward or back on this or that or the other thing. So that it's happening in spades on large tractor and combines. It not to the same extent on the smaller equipment. It will get there. Mm-hmm. And you will find in your life there are more and more things that are becoming that have electronic components. I mean, for goodness sakes, a refrigerator now has a computer on it. And if you want to change your water filter in the refrigerator, you've got to call a technician so they can connect the water filter with the computer that's in the refrigerator. I'm going, oh, really? So there's a lot of opportunity. It creates a lot of profit for companies to do that, because they can come back time and time again once they sell you something. So yes, you're right. It's a big deal for the big stuff, and it's our food supply, etc. But don't be surprised. There's lots of the little stuff that's coming along.
Willie, thank you for your efforts in this, and keep us updated. I appreciate you taking your time to talk today.
Oh, absolutely. And Mike, please put my email address in the comment line so that people can reach out. I'm happy to work with anybody. Yeah, I may get some people who are cranky at me, but that's part of life, right?
People can be cranky.
Yeah. And I can be sometimes too.
Me too. Absolutely. Well, thank you, Willie.
Hey, Mike, this was great. Let's do it again. Maybe we can talk after the release of the legislative materials.
That sounds great. Thanks.